Well, thank you all so much for joining me today. I'm Cory Rodriguez. I am a SIFF Festival programmer. I've been with the festival for 7 or 8 years now. And my focus is on queer programming. So this program has been the one that I focused on for the last number of years. I am so excited to have you all here. The program this year, A Gay in the Life, I'm very, very proud of. All of your films are absolutely incredible, and it made the perfect program in my eyes this year. So thank you all so much. I do want to start off just with everyone introducing themselves and sharing which film that you're associated with. I know your names are on the bottom of each of your little windows, but it'd be lovely to hear from each of you.
Hey guys, I'm Jake. I directed Bruce Fruit Tastes Sweeter.
I'm Adrian Chiarella. I directed Dwarf Planet.
I'm MH Murray, and I directed Ghost.
Excellent.
Hey guys, I'm Danny Navarro. I directed My Neighbor Miguel.
I'm Paco Ruiz, and I directed 3 times.
Hi guys, I'm Guillaume, and I wrote Extra Favor. I took the Carlos place, who is the director at the last.
Lovely to have you here.
Hi guys, I'm Adar Ziegler, and I'm the director of the film Virgin, I guess.
Excellent. Thank you all. So I just wanted to start out. I have some questions for everybody to answer, and then I have some questions specific to each film. So I'll kind of scatter them throughout, but I'll start out with a question for everybody. I'm curious to know what the inspiration was for each of your stories, whether it be an experience or a person or persons or something that you ended up, reading or watching. But yeah, what was the inspiration?
I guess I'll go first. My film started as like a conversation between myself and the lead actor, Mark. And we were just sort of lamenting the concept of ghosting and how prevalent it is and how everybody kind of does it, I guess, to some degree. And I felt in the queer community, it's a little bit, it could feel heightened because our dating pool is smaller. So I think sometimes there's like an extra sense of like urgency or intensity when you find someone that you really like, because it feels like a rare occurrence maybe. So yeah, that's how it started.
I found out after about 10 years living in San Francisco that I would have to move across the country. And SF is a city I love deeply, and I needed to find a way to say thank you to the city. So sort of a love letter. And I thought a lot about what that could look like and what that letter actually entailed. But then I realized the whole time the love letter was like my 72-year-old landlord, Miguel. He's this beautiful man that he lived in the top floor of my Victorian home in SF. And he would always create these like art pieces he would hang outside of our living room window. And I was just so interested in him. And the more and more time I got to spend with him, the more I realized he was San Francisco. He is the best of the city. And so I spent a lot of time with him. We became close friends, and while sort of he had this kind of present day embodiment of the best of SF, the more time I got to spend with him, the more I realized he has some deep historical ties to some of the tougher parts of the city and its evolution. And so when I got to kind of realize he was the love letter, that's how My Neighbor Miguel was born.
I'm gonna be next. Three times is not based on my own experience or something that happened to me or to someone close to me. I guess I just wanted to talk about how we all behave in different ways when we feel that we are victims or of something unfair, or that we feel that something wrong is happening around us. But it is curious that after shooting the film, many people talk to me and share their own experience about the topic of the film, which is dates on the internet or on apps that go wrong. I mean, everything that could go wrong on a date in a very creepy way. And yeah, I mean, it's cool that many people share that with me, because I mean, we are expose ourselves a lot when we met someone that we don't know at all.
Go next. So I went through a breakup and was interested in talking about how trauma works in relationships, how secrets work in a relationship, and how those things, whether or not you want them to bind you together, they can. And so I was wanting to explore something like that. And I was also really interested in queer deviancy and people like Leopold and Loeb and that kind of like canon of like bad queers, you know, like two gay men on the run kind of idea, and making it more of an accident rather than something that was like psychopathic. And so that's sort of where the film came from.
I read a queer short story called Concealer by a writer, a New Zealand writer actually, who sort of spent a lot of time in Australia, Andy Borum. It was a really short, very, very short sort of 2-page story about a male sex worker who gets called to this house and realizes that he's being called by this kind of overweight, awkward teenager. And the short story was written in the first person from the perspective of the male sex worker. A really kind of beautiful, cynical voice, almost like a Bret Easton Ellis kind of style. But it meant I didn't really know much about this other character, this young teenage guy in the house. And I really wanted to adapt the story, but I wanted to figure out who that character was. And in the short story, there was just a line where the sex worker observed there was a solar system mobile hanging over his bed. And I just sort of fleshed out the character from there. I started thinking, well, why does this guy who's like entering adulthood still have that hanging over his bed? Like, why hasn't he taken it down yet? And what does it mean to him, this object? And so that's where the story and the process of adaptation kind of took off, and it kind of informed everything about how to make the film, that idea. So yeah.
For extra flavor, I just wanted to make a comedy based on a particular image that came to my mind without explanation. It was just an image of a physically normal guy watching towards bodybuilders down the street. I don't know why, but I'm quite obsessed with the bodybuilders since several months or year. I really don't know why, but I thought it would make a great generator of image for a short movie. So I basically just took this image and I tried to figure where this image could lead me in terms of a short story.
I have to say that first of all, I wrote the first draft of the script, which looked totally different from what eventually the film came out to be. And I sat with a friend, and I thought that the first draft was not candid enough or brave enough or edgy enough, and we had a conversation, and she asked me to think what would I want to happen if there were no limitations and no one was looking, and it wasn't a film, and it was some gay guy's life having a problem. And then and that's how I got the idea. It's not autobiographical, but that's how I came up with it.
Excellent. Thank you very much. All right. I'll make it easier for these other questions. I'll just call on people. So this one is another for everybody. I'm curious if each of these stories was always, queer. Was it always queer focused? And if it wasn't, like, did that just happen in the process of developing the film? And what, beyond just sharing a queer experience and sharing those stories, which is of course very important, what do you think the queer element adds to this film, each of the films? Paco, would you like to start?
Yeah, I will start. Yeah, my film was always queer focus, I think. Yeah, I think that's because I wanted to talk about shame, and being the protagonist of the film, a teenager who could be caught by his family in any moment doing something of which he will be very, very ashamed. For me, it was important that he was a gay guy, because he's on that age where you keep on hiding from many things, also to yourself. And yeah, I guess this and also my intuition led me to keep it always as a queer story.
Excellent. Adrian, do you want to go next?
Yeah, sure. Well, obviously, I mean, it was based on a short story that was very, very queer. I guess when I adapted it, I knew that, I'm a gay man and sort of 40 now. So I was sort of a generation away from the young character in the film. And so I spoke to a lot of younger gay men just to kind of, because my experience didn't involve the internet and all of that sort of stuff when I was a teenager. So it was kind of interesting speaking to younger gay men about what they went through. And one thing that kind of came up, a lot of them sort of said, oh, my earliest gay experiences were, going online and just like chatting to guys and like doing this sort of weird online role play that never really goes anywhere. And so the actor and I kind of came up with this idea, which, I mean, doesn't print in the film, but it was just a really useful thing for their performance, where we sort of talked about, oh, what if you got into one of those scenarios and this went too far? You offered someone money and then they actually turned up, and this is something that you didn't expect to kind of happen. So, so that level of kind of, I don't know, researching the generation younger than me kind of really paid off. But, just as a gay filmmaker, I kind of connected with the original story, which was, always very queer. So, yeah.
Nice. Jake, would you like to go next?
Yeah. Yeah, it was always queer. I had made a few shorts before, and they weren't like about queer people at all. I mean, I guess I would still consider them queer, but they weren't like, the lead characters weren't necessarily like open queer people. So yeah, that it was important to me to kind of work in that vernacular that I was talking about before, with like the Hitchcockian rope man, or like, I don't know, like the queer undertones of Psycho and things like that, and kind of like work them into this a little bit somehow. And so in that way, it was like pretty important from the jump that we keep it queer and keep our cast and like main parts of our crew queer people.
Guillaume, would you like to go next?
Yeah, sure. No, when I start writing this project, it was not queer focused, as you said, but I was really soon conscious of the homoeroticism that came from the character's eyes, because yes, I'm really interested in. I was really interested in that gray zone, even if I don't like this term, that can exist even with straight guys looking at other guys when they so because as a straight guy, it was my way of approaching this particular glance, and I was yes, so it was that look that is not pure desire, but where there is something, a kind of attraction, even if it's not purely sexual or erotic. So I tried to, yes, I wanted to explore that um, gray zone that, in my experience, exists a lot in the fitness places.
Thank you. Very interesting. Thank you for sharing that. Let's see. Danny, would you like to go next?
Sure. I think because the project first started out as an ode to San Francisco, a love letter to the city, it wasn't a gay film to begin with. And even when I moved to telling the story of Miguel, it was more the beginning, a sort of quirky neighbor thing. Here's like my crazy landlord who does crazy art pieces and builds, kooky costumes. But the more time I got to spend with him, the more I couldn't deny the role that the gay community in San Francisco had influenced him and his experience coming to the city in the 80s. And the further I went with him, the idea of this love letter, you cannot write a love letter to the city celebrating so much of what's great about it without acknowledging his generation and his community, those that made up the gay community in the 80s of the city. And so it was not expected. Like, next thing you know, I'm in cafes with 70 and 80-year-old gay men and spending most of my time with them, understanding their stories and their time in the city. So I'm not just telling the story of Miguel, but his friends and those that were part of the early makings of a lot of what present day we now get to enjoy out of SF.
Great, thank you. Edar, would you like to go next?
Yes, sure. My characters were always from the beginning queer, and just because I wanted to give a spotlight to anal sex between two guys. And but I have to say that a lot of actually, after I screened the film in Israel, a lot of women came to me and said that they shared common feelings and they had been in that situation. So it was kind of nice to hear, but my meaning was always to talk about queer characters. Yes.
Perfect. And last, we have MH Murray.
Yeah, I guess it was always queer because it's not necessarily 100% autobiographical, but the film is almost like a hybrid in the sense that it's shot in Mark's apartment, like at the store that he goes to. He's playing like his own instruments, and so he's queer. So it was always going to be like about him and his space. And like I said before, I think I wanted to tell the story from a queer perspective as well, just because of the heightened aspects of going through that experience.
Excellent. Yeah, and the reason why I asked this question is, never want to make full assumption that, it was always going to be queer, and that, everyone who makes them is queer. But I think, it having that element in there definitely adds something special. And I think it's a big part of the process, talking about, who made it and why, and having that queer element, it appeals to a different audience, and that's for a certain reason. And I think sharing that development process really sheds light on that. So thank you all for answering that piece.
That was really scary. Like I won't lie to like many times over I asked myself, like, who am I to tell the story of a gay man in his 70s, and who am I to tell the story of the AIDS epidemic in San Francisco? Like, both of those things were scary. The sort of intersectionality between age, sexuality itself, and my own age and sexuality. That was like, I almost just like put myself in libraries and spent time with friends to really not screw this up, because it is not my story. It is a story of someone else, and to protect that and to honor that was extremely intimidating, but important to do. If you're going to say that you're going to make a doc about someone, it needs to include all of them.
Absolutely. Absolutely. All right. My next question for all of you is hopefully a little bit easier. What is your favorite part of making this film or making short films in general? I know some of you have made multiple, and some, maybe this was the first time. Oh, sorry, I forgot to call on somebody. Let's go with Guillaume. And Guillaume, I know you can speak from the you can speak about screenwriting more specifically rather than directing.
Yes, the most interesting part for me with that particular project was the meeting with Carlos, who directed the movie, because it was 100% my idea, and even the film in its final form totally respect the everything that I put in place when I was writing. So it was a really interesting for me to propose a universe to a director and to see with him where we can lead the movie in terms of images, in terms of rhythm. So because the fun part in that is that I came to Carlos because he is known at in my school. He's known for directing very talkative movies, and I came to him with this short idea, a short film idea, which is totally silent. So I just thought it would be quite interesting and quite funny to address this idea to that particular director and see, yes, what we can do with this silent character. So, and in my opinion, it was a really successful enterprise because I really loved the shape of the movie in the end, because it matches with what I had in mind, but also there is all these things that Carlos imagined and put in place while directing the movie. So yes, the meeting with the director was the most important and interesting part as far as I'm concerned as a screenwriter.
Got it. Jake?
Well, I love shorts because you don't have to answer everything. that things can feel mysterious, and that things can, you have such a short amount of time, and it can be really, that time can actually make it even more creative than like a full 90-minute where you really have to like find a lot of things need to happen in 90 minutes. When like you have 10, you can really leave things to the audience and have more implied than having to come out and say things very directly. So I love that. I mean, that's what I love about making shorts, especially this one. And for this, I loved working with the car. I had never done a hit, like I'd never done a stunt before or anything like that. So that was really scary and like, but fun, and required a lot of prep work. But yeah, the car is like an element. We got this like 1990s gray Volvo from this like random man in Pennsylvania. It was like very odd, like friend of a friend who knew a guy who had a car, and we like picked it up and ended up driving it down the side of a cliff with like our cast in it and like faking a hit for a whole day. So that was awesome. But also just like the elements of the glass and rain and windshield wipers and how the car sounds and exhaust. And I feel like I didn't realize when I wrote in this like car element that there was so much like cinematic quality that was going to come with it, that as we were shooting, I started to really lean into it as like a device that hopefully like filled out the film a little bit more.
Awesome. Adar?
Yes, I think the one thing that I found really fascinating that I wanted to explore in terms of a short film was actually trying to depict an elaborate, comical, but also really, really daring and hopefully moving sex scene, and almost in kind of real time, and it was really a big challenge with the actors, and it was really, really actually kind of fun to direct. But actually, I have to say that the one shot that I really, really, really enjoyed the entire film was the dance scene, and I actually, I mean, I made the actors dance for like, I don't know, maybe 20 takes, even though I had the take that I wanted, but I just so much enjoyed seeing them dancing, and it was really, really fun.
I love that beginning of them dancing. It was a good introduction to both of them as friends, because it's such a fun moment. And then, you know, to ease into this interesting and, you know, somewhat awkward situation, I thought that was a great opener.
Thanks.
Adrian?
I really enjoy working with actors, and I've been lucky enough with all of my shorts to be able to accommodate a little bit of rehearsal time. It's usually not much. It's usually like, you know, a few hours on, you know, a weekend before we shoot. And usually I really love, I'm one of those people that sort of rehearses around the scene. I don't really rehearse the scene itself. We kind of do a lot of stuff to kind of figure out, you know, the relationships that exist between the characters, especially in a short, because you don't really get to see. Sometimes people will come on and you're like, oh, those two people have been a couple for 30 years, and they just have to play that. And so if you get rehearsal, you get time to figure out what that looks like. This was the first thing I did where it was an interaction between strangers, and it was just really fun to spend a couple of hours with the actors just figuring out that energy, that awkward energy that was between them. And yeah, so that was just a really enjoyable experience. I kind of wasn't really sure how to do it, but once I was actually in with the room with the actors, like it kind of just made sense as we were going, because they brought a lot to it as well. Yeah.
Paco?
Yeah, well, 3 times is my first short film, so I was scared and anxious the whole process. I was really scared, but I think that the thing that
Oops. We'll give him just a moment here.
it was not easy to find the cast for 3 times, because My connection is a little bit slow right now. Oops,
No worries,
sorry.
Paco. Do you want us to give you, we can give you a minute. I can switch to someone else for the moment while you troubleshoot if you'd like. We'll go ahead. We'll give him a moment to get set back up. Danny, would you like to go in the meantime?
Yeah, sure. Like Paco, I won't finish his cliffhanger, but it is also my first film, and that was terrifying to me, largely because I had put together or convinced a lot of really talented people to work on the project with me, and I think that was also my favorite part is, you know, from Miguel to our composer to our DP, like the people that we put together on the project are insanely talented, and to see how can I as a director try to make the best of all of these really special pieces that are far more talented than I am in any of their you know, functional expertise. That was so cool to, you know, I'm like on the edge of my seat at all times, like not really sure what to ask, not really sure how to like direct people. And you sort of are making things up as you go, but because they are masters of their domain, they're going to bring some magic that you don't even know about yet, and that can come from color to sound, to the interviews themselves. And that was just a magical process to be a part of, because you are not really in control. You're in control, but it's sort of, there is some losslessness and beauty in just kind of like being able, like being willing to let go and let people that are, you know, really talented do their thing. And to have some sort of like, to bring some sort of shape to that, to where we get to create that, the film was my favorite part by far.
Awesome. Paco, you can, since you're back, you can go ahead and.
Yeah, I'm sorry, guys. Something went wrong with my connection. Yeah, I was telling you that yeah, 3 times it was my first short film, and I was quite scared. But the thing that scared me the most was at the end. The thing that I enjoyed the most, which was working with the actor, working with the cast. It was not fine to find the actors for our short film, because the script was kind of graphic about the sex scenes, and yeah, and also I realized that many straight actors don't feel comfortable with that, and also many gay actors don't want to play gay roles, or at least play gay roles several times, because they feel like at some point they will stop calling them or for straight roles. So yeah, that's something that I thought that, but well, I'm a new time director, and I never thought that it could be so difficult to cast, yeah, to make the casting for our something. But when we got it, yeah, it was amazing. I realized that that's the thing that I enjoy the most, when I am shooting, just working with the cast, and that's actually the thing that I'm most proud about my short film.
Thanks, Paco. I'm glad we could hear the rest of that. And MH Murray, I believe, is our last person.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I love, I don't see as much of a distinction, I guess, between, well, I haven't made a feature film, but I've done a web series, and I guess that was sort of like shooting a bunch of little short films, but it was serialized. So, I mean,
It counts.
it counts. But I don't know. I definitely enjoy the process of just filmmaking in general, I guess. And for this project, I was really interested in, you know, doing something that was a fictionalized version of something pretty real. And collaborating with Mark was really cool, because normally there wasn't like sort of this disconnect of like having to rehearse or having to learn lines, because there's no lines. or having to do all those traditional things. It was more of like a really intimate kind of just feeling that we had between each other when we were shooting it, and just sort of exploring every little nook and cranny of his apartment and figuring out how he would go about his day if he was trying to distract himself from those emotions and feelings. And yeah, I think the biggest struggle, I guess, that I encountered with the film was the editing process, because we had so much footage, and I just really wanted to make sure each moment kind of meant something or showed something different. So I had to do a lot of killing your darlings, I guess, as they say. Like it was, you know, we all love, well, hopefully love what we shoot. So cutting it down to its barest bones, I think, is a difficult thing, but almost always necessary. So this was a really good exercise in that. And also it's my first project that I've done without any dialogue. So that was another good exercise, I think, for me as a filmmaker, to try to tell a story without any speaking. I mean, I guess I did sort of cheat a little bit by having text messages. So that's another kind of dialogue, but yeah, that was a cool experience. And that was definitely one of the things we set out to do with the film, was, you know, try to tell more of a visual story. And also sonically, we wanted to play a lot with the sound and fill in the gaps where, you know, dialogue might help convey an emotion or feeling, you know, depending on what the sound is. Like, for example, we played a lot with which songs would be playing, or the sounds of his apartment, playing with the levels of like breathing and water and things like that could sort of play into his mental state. So yeah, it was a good exercise, I think, in filmmaking for me.
Very cool. All right, I'm watching the time. I'm going to try and keep us within the hour. So I'm going to switch to just some individual questions. MH Murray, since you just answered the last one, I'll have you start this time. So specifically related to Ghost, I have to say I absolutely loved the score and the music throughout the film. And I loved the song at the end so much that my boyfriend and I were like, we need to find this song. And so of course we you know, went back, looked at the credits, and I realized that the song is actually by Mark Clennon, who plays Benjamin. And I thought that was just the coolest thing. And now I'm like in love with his music. I've been listening to it a ton since I watched the film the first time. But related to Sound and Music, and you kind of answered a bit of this with your last answer, but I was just curious, you know, and I guess more so the music, like, was that always supposed to play a huge role, or did it just sort of work out that way? Especially, you know, having this ending where, you know, Benjamin is silently just having this moment to himself, you know, dancing to, funnily enough, to his own music. But yeah, just curious.
Some of it was intentional, and then some of it, I mean, if you did become a fan of him, you would maybe notice in his other music videos, he's sort of known for like this sort of interpretive like dance that he does that is not very like choreographed. It's very, when I first saw him dancing in one of his videos, I was like, this is, you know, something so special that I want to try to incorporate into the story. And you know, I think dancing is one of the most like cathartic and like natural things that we do as humans. So I love any chance I get to put dancing in something, I'll throw it in there. But with this, there was like another level. I actually didn't know what song was going to play before we shot. I mean, when we shot, we played that actual song, and he was dancing to that actual song because I wanted like all the beats that he was hitting with his body to match. And initially I was thinking it should I was like thinking about it. I was like, should it be his own song, or is that like too, like, I don't know, self-indulgent or something? But then as we were discussing it, and as he played that song for me, because it was actually unreleased at the time, and when I heard that song, I was just like, yeah, this is the one. Um, and then when I was thinking about it, like, it wasn't my intention initially, but through the process, I was like, there's sort of a interesting psychological thing going on, in the sense that you don't really know in the film, like, story wise, but if you do take the time to look at the credits and I guess ponder the film, which is what we hope people do when they watch our films, I guess, you know, like, think about it after and wonder. And I thought there's something cool about just him being by himself and being empowered, sort of, and it being his own music adds a certain level of like interiority or something that just felt right and felt like recognizable. I mean, I'm not a musician, so I don't have my own music to listen to, but I can imagine, you know, it's probably pretty cathartic. It's sort of like the feeling we get, I think, when we make something like a film that we are really proud of, and it's like a little bit of yourself in there. So having that song play then, and you know, the lyrics about not being perfect and stuff, just felt kind of right. I mean, I think it's right on the border of being too much, but I think hopefully it hits, you know, the spot. Yeah. And the score was actually done by my friend Spencer, who I've worked with on all my projects, and he is like kind of a little bit of a mastermind in terms of finding the right sounds and just making it feel kind of epic, or making really small intimate moments feel like bigger, which is what I wanted for this film, especially because it's such a simple sort of plot, but I think despite its simplicity, there's like a really intense undercurrent, and I really wanted the score to almost feel like unsettling at times, to increase, you know, a feeling of anxiety or just that sort of dread that you get when you're waiting for a message, or when you're unsure if you've like offended someone or hurt someone's feelings, or, you know, that sort of mental thing that you do when you're unsure about the other person in your relationship. And it can be really almost like a horror movie, but just a lot of dread. You know, I definitely wanted to highlight the dread through that, but it's sort of juxtaposed with the last song that's a lot more hopeful, still kind of sad, but a bit more hopeful. So yeah.
Awesome. Well, yeah, I think some great choices were made there, and I think for me, like leading up to the ending, I was like, he could just, like, you know, find somebody else, like, or he's gonna like hang out with friends or something, but just having this like moment to himself, and the word, you know, the word says, or excuse me, the song says it all, and his movements. I just thought it was a really perfect ending to
And we
that.
only actually, to contrast the 20 takes, we actually only did one take of that. So
Oh, nice.
when we did one take, and I was like, as much as I would have loved to watch him dance for 20 takes, it just felt like we had it. So, and also he had to go to work. So,
And there was that.
yeah.
Cool.
But I mean, we probably could have done more takes if we needed to, but it just felt like, you know, one of those. I generally try to do not too many takes, because I think sometimes if you can get it right on the first time and it feels right, sometimes it's nice to explore it more, but sometimes I think it's good to just take that moment and move forward, especially, you know, working in low budget filmmaking. Sometimes you have to just try to capture the magic as fast as you can.
All right.
This is as much of a chance as I'll ever have to say, but the sound and the music was so good. Like, oh man, props. That was awesome. Like the suspense and anxiety that I had at times I was supposed to feel that level of anxiousness. I thought you guys nailed it.
But I appreciate it.
Thanks, Danny. All right. Well, I will move on to my question for you, Danny, for my neighbor Miguel. I mean, Miguel is just such a quirky and, you know, inspiring individual. After making the film, I'm sure you both have stayed in close contact. You know, what is he up to? How is he doing? How has it been for him, especially like during COVID? I imagine he's doing all sorts of artsy things, being confined to his home.
Yeah. Miguel, he was going through some tough times during the midst of COVID. You know, you have someone who is HIV positive. He's in his 70s. He's not able to go outside. You know, come like April or May, like he was told to not leave his house. And this is someone who already suffers from severe depression for having lost most of his friends to AIDS. And you have this like coming together, like the worst storm, where, you know, he just was super bummed through most of the pandemic, and it made our project, we had filmed it in the end of 2019 over a couple of days, and more so than anything, we just worked to get this film out for him, and to our only goal was to like convince a theater to open it up to him and like maybe a friend. That was our main goal. Is we knew he needed to, you know, be treated like a movie star for a day, and if we could give him that sort of happiness and enjoyment just for a day, then we did our jobs. If other people see it, then I hope that they do, and I hope they like it. But it's like, let's make it for this guy. So that meant a lot for us to be able to show it to him. We rented out the folks at a movie theater called the Roxy in San Francisco were kind enough to sneak him in, and you know, just him with a very small number of his friends, very far away from each other. So we got to show it, and ever since he got that kind of dose of happiness, and he's loved it. You know, the San Francisco or Bay Area papers have been writing about him, and he's soaking up all the attention, and it's given him a nice dose of happiness. Of course, we still text probably every other week or so. Now we've just become really close friends, and to be able to tell his story and to just give him a little bit of happiness at a time that it was really hard to do, then, you know, we're pumped about it. And Miguel, when we asked him, like when he gave us permission to tell his story, you know, I asked, okay, well, what's the message that you want to tell? He asked, and that we make sure that we, you know, tell people that AIDS isn't over, and that there is a generation of people that have been lost, and we shouldn't forget about them. So I would be remiss in if I didn't mention, you know, what his goals are, and for us in making this thing. And so whenever we share this or whenever I speak to him, it's consistently impressing the notion that we're sharing that message with as many people as possible. So yeah, that's about it. And he's doing well. He's still making artwork, and he's still putting a ton of pieces out. Now I think more than before. He held himself to once a month, but now he really has to do it because he's like now like a neighborhood legend. People are writing him little letters now from around the world that come in and are asking what his next pieces are. So he's being held more accountable than ever to keep the art coming.
Very cool. I'm so happy to hear that. Thank you, Danny. All right. My question for you, Jake, for Bruce Fruit Tastes Sweeter. So watching the film the first time, the cinematography really struck me. I loved all of these beautiful close-ups of the couple, and then those like wider shots when they're out in the forest. I know it was shot on the East Coast, but to me, it seemed very Pacific Northwest when I watched it with the rain and the forest. I was like, oh yeah, this is definitely in the Cascades. But I was hoping that you could just talk about some of the visual choices that you know, you and your DP made for the film.
Yeah, so Corey Freemanlot is the guy who shot my film. He's like the best and is the coolest guy, and like he shoots all my stuff, and you should look up his work. Well, we shot on 35mm 2 perf because we wanted to, and I had to convince my producers that it wasn't crazy. And I just wanted, I shot 16 before, and we really wanted I wanted to be able to have really dynamic close-ups, especially in the car, since I knew we were going to be locked into that for a lot of the film. And so I felt like 16 just wasn't going to cut it. But I didn't want it to get like too like crispy, pristine, like too glamour shot. So we decided on 2 perf after looking at like a bunch of different references. And in terms of like the cinematography choices, you know, I guess maybe this is like with most short filmmaking, but you feel like you're just like backing into it where you're like, okay, well, we can't do that, so we have to do this. 2perf is cheaper and it's kind of the look we want, so we're gonna do it. And the car, we couldn't figure out a way to do the hit. We had done like a bunch of rehearsals with the hit, and we ended up realizing it had to be handheld. We weren't gonna do any kind of like locked off shots. And then for me, it kind of just went like, all right, the whole film should be handheld. And yeah, I think it was just like it was a lot of instinct based in terms of the coverage and the shots that we were going for. I really like creating like a whiplash effect of like being close and then being really far. And how in an edit, when you put those 2 shots together, you kind of, there's like a jump visually. So that was where some of the coverage came. And also just the location is gorgeous. We shot in Bear Mountain, which is just like an hour and a half outside of the city, if you're lucky. And yeah, the space is great. We lucked out with rain, even though that doesn't feel lucky. It's like gorgeous production design when you're shooting it, but it sucks while you're doing it. Yeah, what was your question? Your question was visually, right?
Yeah, no, you're fine. You're fine.
Yeah.
I was just curious about some of
Yeah.
the visual choices that were made in that process.
Yeah, I mean, I always just want to try to, if I can find a way to shoot film, I want to make sure we can shoot it, because I really don't want, as like a young filmmaker, I don't want to like forget about it as a medium. And I think there are certain stories that work amazing on digital and certain stories that work amazing on film. And this one just felt like film to me, especially because it was so minimal. The visuals have to do so much of the storytelling of mood and tone that it just kind of became the way to go. And it looks great. And our producers were crazy and said, sure. So that's what we went with.
Awesome. Thank you, Jake. I will go with my question for Adar for Virgin My Ass. I'm curious, and if you aren't able to answer, it's totally fine. But I'm curious, what do you think Ophir and Harel have in store for their future? You know, after this one night in the film.
Actually, it's really, really interesting question because we shot another scene after what appears to be the end of the film. At the end of them speaking in bed, being really, really honest about what just happened that night, but the minute we cut that scene off, it raised so many question marks that I really, really, really like. I mean, when I talk to people that after they are seeing that they see the movie, every single one of them has different opinion of how Ophir ends up emotionally after that experience, and Darrell also. I mean, I had people saying that it was so sad and moving, and he feels like Ophir had I don't know an emotional breakdown, and I have I guess my sister felt the exact opposite. she felt it was so nice to see that he got what he wanted. And I find it interesting that I guess every one of the audience that see the movie reflects from his own experience how we perceive the character feelings at that point. And I really, really liked it. I mean, that it's open to interpretation, and I don't know if I don't know if I should tell you what I meant, but I like it that it's open.
I'm curious if you're willing to share.
Let's say it that way. My first thoughts about making this film was about the feeling you live as a gay man, and you are restricted to, I don't know, the norms and regulation of the people you see around you, and you want to feel a part of a community, and you always feel different, and you are working to find a solution, an external solution of what do you think would make me, I don't know, a normal gay, a gay like everyone else that I see around me. And I think Ophir thought that by performing anal sex for the first time, that will actually, I don't know, solve all of his questions about identity, but eventually finds out that he was really, really barking at the wrong tree. And what he really, really needs to be is honest with himself and happy with who he is, and just experience intimacy without pressure. I mean, I really, really like that the first sentence of the film is, do you want to fuck me? And the last sentence that he says is, can you please stay for a little while? I mean, he thinks that he wants to perform the anal sex, but he just wants someone to stay in bed with him and make him feel a part of something.
Thank you, thank you. Yeah, I have to say that I do love the ending how it is. It's very interesting to know that there was at some point something after, but no, I like that it's open to interpretation. I definitely sat around for a while after watching the first time, just kind of pondering all the like different ways it could continue on, because that dynamic is so interesting, in the dating world, and in the gay community. Like it's so interesting when you're talking about friends and taking that step further to possibly be something else. There's a lot there, but no, I think the ending is perfect, and thank you for sharing all of that extra info. All right, so I am going to get through my last questions for the last three people, and then I'll have one final question that we'll just do briefly, and then we'll do a close. That way I'm not keeping you all on here forever. For Adrian, for Dwarf Planet, we've talked about this a little bit, that at least I believe we did, that there's not a lot of dialogue in the film, and I think that's very related to the original short story, being so short. There were only a couple lines of dialogue in that, so I imagine you wanted to kind of stay very close to that, and as a result of there not being a lot of dialogue, as the viewer, you get a lot of details from the body language and from the environment that surrounds them. But I'm curious if you ever considered adding more dialogue, or did you, want to just keep it as this quieter film?
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, I felt like there was actually, for my standards, there was a lot of dialogue. Like I tend to make a lot of short films that don't have lengthy dialogue scenes in them. And this was the first time I'd sort of forced myself into a room with two actors. And so it was kind of a way of exploring that. But yeah, I mean, I'm trying to think if we actually cut any in the edit. I don't think we cut much dialogue. We cut a little bit. So there certainly was a little bit more. But yeah, I think you're right. A lot of it was, you know, you wanted to get a sense from the visual elements of this environment in terms of particularly who one of these characters is. But also, I think the sex worker, his physicality and the way he moves was a big part of conveying who he was. And that's something we certainly talked about with the actor. But just in terms of the film conveying all of that visually, this was the first time I had worked with a gay cinematographer and a great cinematographer, Michael Filicamo. And I'd never sort of been able to have those conversations with a DP before about how we shoot male bodies and how we light them and all of that kind of stuff. And so I think that played a big part in conveying the tension that's at the heart of the story that was sort of all unspoken. So yeah.
Awesome. And to the cinematography, I also very much loved it. That like those like red tones are just phenomenal. And those shots when he's looking up at the mobile, I really, really love those, and just kind of, you know, slowly zooming in on that, and, you know, giving the viewer a chance to kind of formulate, you know, what he's referring to and what he's talking about. No, really, really, really great.
And actually, yeah, with the red was sort of a discovery, because I knew that I wanted the character, the young man, to close the curtains out of a sense of self-consciousness. And, you know, we just sort of did shoot that, but then in the edit we were like, oh, that's really perfunctory, we don't need that. But from that idea of curtains, that Michael kind of came up with this thing of, you know, he wanted a very particular color red, and he spent a lot of time with the production designer figuring out exactly what that sort of pinky red would be. So yeah, I think he felt that was really important to convey that emotion. So yeah.
Nice. All right, Paco, I will do my question for you for 3 times. So, you know, the film definitely has a number of little twists or surprises, which just make the film super tense and really incredible. But I'm hoping that you can just talk to us a little bit about that ending, because that like punch right at the end is just like, ah.
Well, I remember being on the editing room with the editor of the film, like on the last days of editing, and telling him like, oh my God, I think we made a thriller, because it was not my idea at all to make a thriller. You know, it is true that I'm a huge fan of horror movies. I love horror movies, and
Hey, Paco, your connection is slowing a little bit.
there's an influence on little and big things on 3 times, from thrillers and horror movies, and it's not good. Okay, I'm gonna try something and I'll be back, right?
Okay, no problem.
Sorry, guys. Maybe you can move on with the next question, and I'll be. And in the meantime, I can fix this. Sorry.
No problem. So, Guillaume, my question for extra flavor, and of course, again, you can, you know, answer this from the screenwriting standpoint. But I found it interesting that, you know, age is a defining factor in the film, at least for me. You know, Joaquim is this, you know, older man, and kind of, you know, you could take it in 2 ways. You know, you could take it as he's sort of lusting after these younger men, or in the way that you described earlier in the Q&A, you know, that it's not necessarily, you know, it doesn't necessarily need to be super erotic. But I am curious if it was ever considered, you know, changing his age. Like, was he always in his 60s, or, you know, was it considered to have him be the same age as the gym goers, or have him be a younger man?
Yes, actually, the question of his age was raised quite early in the writing process. I wanted to have an older man, but we had in mind with the producers that the story would not be the same, whereas we staged a man in his 50s, in his 60s, or even in his 40s. So I guess the movie, I think it has to do, it has a lot to do with the cast in the end, because the only thing that we were sure about was that we wanted him to be older than the guys he was looking at, because there is this thing about, as you said, the age and the way our bodies change through through the years, and also the question of that power and that uh, the power that is associated with man and manhood. So that's a question that is at the center of the movie, but we didn't want to. It's not the main subject. It is meant to be something that we feel, but we didn't want to push too hard on that button. So yes, we really wanted him to be at the crossroads between different things. The fact that he's alone, and the fact that they are together, and the fact that he's older, and the fact that they're younger. But in the end, I think the main point of the movie is it's just a lonely guy who wants to be part of a group, and the comedy is a good way um, to tell that kind of story, in my opinion.
Thank you very much. And it looks like, yay, Paco's back. Perfect. That was like perfect timing. Game just finished.
I'm so sorry, guys. This never happens, and today is happening the whole time. Like, yeah, sorry. I was telling you that. Yeah, it was never my idea to make a thriller, I think, but I'm always being interested about the tools, the dramatic tools of the horror movies and the thrillers, and I mean also, for example, when I sent the first music references for the musician, all of them were music from horror movies. So yeah, it's true that I like and I enjoy using those tools for telling a story. And yeah, regarding the ending of the film, I love the idea of finishing a movie out of camera. I mean, finishing a movie and the whole thing happens out of our reach, and we don't get to know what happened. And many people have told me, like, but tell us what happened. Did he hit him with the glass or not, or something? And I don't have any idea, because as a director, I'm already interested about what happens in front of the camera and what the characters want in that exactly moment. I mean, I never think about the biography of the characters or things like this. I work with the moment and with what we know about that. So I cannot tell you much about the ending. I hope I hope he hit him with the glass. I can tell you that, but I don't know.
Me too. All right, thank you, Paco.
Thanks.
I know that Song Huang, who is the director of Touch, the other film in this program, wasn't able to join us. But in lieu of a question for that film, I just wanted to quickly plug Touch. It's a really incredible film, and I highly recommend all of you watching it. You know, if you get the chance. It's just this really great, you know, drama about a young blind gay man who's struggling to navigate life and more specifically, you know, the dating world, you know, after losing his sight. But yeah, I just wanted to plug that real quick. Lastly, my final question, which I always love to ask, and we'll just go around quickly and then we'll close out, is you know, what are you doing now? What are you working on? Do you have a single project, or are you working on multiple things? Oops, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Should we just go? Should we just go grab it?
Jake, I'll have you start.
Okay.
Sorry about that.
No, it's fine. I'm working on a feature that is an adaptation of Bruised that, you know, makes it longer and pulls it apart. The resolution we reach, you know, like 8 minutes into the film is obviously like the climax. So right now I'm working on like, how do we fill that time in the days following this? And besides that, I'm working on this also the short. My grandfather has these letters that he passed away many years ago, but he has these letters where he was stationed in Japan during World War II that were from a woman he met there and seems to be romantically involved with, and he kept them his whole life. And so I'm working in the process of getting them translated and doing something with them. I'm not sure what it is yet, but that's something that's kind of like maybe more like interdisciplinary or short or documentary fiction something. But that's another thing that's like in the back of my mind always, waiting to hear from someone in Japan who's translating them now.
Awesome. Guillaume, anything that you're working on, or if you know if Carlos is working on anything new?
Yes, I know Carlos is currently working on this feature. We are the collaboration between us went really well, so we are also working on a series project together, which is basically it's based on extra flavor universe and characters. So it's quite funny to continue this this adventure with him. And personally, yes, I'm writing a feature for my for the end of my studies, and I'm also working on 2 short movies that I normally will direct in the month to come.
Great, thank you. Idar?
Currently, I'm actually casting and script advising to another director on his project. It's a feature film. And I have a couple of ideas of one of them is a TV series and one of them is a feature film, but both of them are really, really in early stages. So I hope something good will come out of it.
Great. MH Murray?
So in Canada, there's like this thing called the Canada Council for the Arts, which is like a funding system, and Mark and I have been collaborating on another project that it's not like the same story as Ghost, but it's the same character. I'm really interested in like following one character over different projects of different sizes and runtimes, I guess. So this is a feature, and it's about Benjamin from Ghost, and it's sort of based on true events, and also again a little bit of a hybrid, but it's about Benjamin as he struggles to acquire PEP following an encounter. And in Canada, we have like a universal healthcare system, but certain drugs related to HIV, like PEP and PrEP, are not covered after a certain age, and it's very expensive. Like the drugs are very expensive, so there's sort of a discourse there with respect to like the disparities in access to these medications. So the film is sort of about his struggle to acquire that, and sort of kind of a bit of like a romance, I guess, an unconventional romance. So yeah, we got some money from the Canada Council to develop the screenplay and do some research about the healthcare system and the drugs. So yeah, that's really exciting. I think, you know, a lot of people within the queer community know what those drugs are, but a lot of people outside don't. And I'm also surprised, you know, to find out people don't even know like that they exist, or what they do, and how they can, you know, affect in people's lives, and, you know, really help people. I think that it's really important to have that conversation about access, and especially for marginalized folks who don't have the financial means to, you know, just have $1,000 to get a pill, you know. So yeah, that's the project that we're working on now, and hopefully the screenplay will be done in the next couple months, and then we're going to try to shoot it sort of, you know, as a low budget feature in similar vein with the same cinematographer, and hopefully maybe another Mark Clennon song in there, maybe some dancing. We'll see.
Awesome. Well, I'm excited for that. I will definitely keep an eye out for any news. Paco.
Yeah, after 3 times, yeah, the producer was quite happy with the film, so he encouraged me to write something new and longer, like a feature film. So that's what I'm doing right now. We are developing a new film, but we are taking our time. I mean, hopefully we'll be shooting in a couple of years, or I don't know. It's a sci-fi movie. So yeah, maybe it's gonna take long.
Very cool. Thank you. Adrian? Oops, you're on mute.
Yeah, sorry. I'm making another short film. It's not a gay short film. It's the first time I've done a straight short film, so I'm entering that terrifying, uncharted territory. And I'm also working on writing a feature film. It's a queer horror movie involving religion and sexuality and the way certain organizations make monsters out of our own desires. So I'm really excited about that.
Horror is my like other, it's my favorite genre and my other specialty, so that's like right up my alley. Very cool. Thank you. And Danny.
Yeah, I am working on a story, another short doc. It's about a backup NFL quarterback who won the hearts and minds of football fans around the country. He actually doesn't know it yet. So part of it is concepting the story, and I want to get it to a good enough place to be able to pitch it to him. But the story it makes me very excited. I think it's a really beautiful sort of story of progression, non-linear progression of this guy who has been consistently rejected from the sort of sport, but still manages to somehow end up in these incredible positions throughout his career. Again, he doesn't know he is the main character in a short documentary just yet, so we'll see how that goes. Fingers crossed.
Excellent. Thank you. Well, thank you all so much for hanging out with me today and chatting about all of your amazing films. Again, this program is awesome, and it is because of all of your amazing work. Thank you so much, and I'm excited to see. I wish I could be in a theater to watch everybody like I do in previous years, but I'm looking forward to seeing social media and seeing everyone talk about these films, because they're truly something special. So yes, thank you again. And I hope you all have a lovely rest of your day, or for some of you, night. And I hope to see you all in the SIFF Lounge. I'm sure Megan or someone else from the programming team will mention more details about that, but it'll be a virtual lounge for everyone to go to in lieu of our actual physical lounge every year. But yeah, I hope to talk to you all more, more just casually, grab a drink or something virtually. But thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Nice to meet you all.
Yeah.
Bye.
Bye, guys.